Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and I was always told I had a voice radio, so today I am showing you a very weird deck that made its way onto the stream in Japan this past weekend. A really weird deck, one that's fun, and great news, one that is legal in our expanded format. Now, a quick reminder, as always, we are playing Breakthrough on at the moment in our standard format, but Japan is playing X and Y onwards, so there are a few cards in this deck that you can't play in the standard format. The great news is, in our expanded format, we're playing black and white on, and you absolutely can play all of these cards and a few more in our expanded format. And what's really cool about this particular deck, it plays both ARCHIE'S Ace in the Hole and it plays MAXIE'S Hidden Ball Trick. Now, these both are very, very similar cards. They are supporter cards that can only be played if they're the only card in your hand. You get to take, for ARCHIE'S, a water Pokemon, for MAXIE'S, a fighting Pokemon, from your discard and put it onto your bench, so it can be a stage 2, but it's essentially a basic, and then you get to draw until you've got 5 cards in your hand. Well, that sounds like a lot of fun to me. It's just a way of getting Pokemon, and Gallade is the classic, and yes, we play Gallade here, onto the field without having to do any of that Stage 2 evolution malarkey. And in terms of MAXIE'S here, it really is Gallade that we're going for. Gallade is a phenomenal Pokemon that has a great ability allowing you to look at the top 5 cards of your deck and rearrange them, and a great attack for a double colourless energy that does 130 as long as you use the supporter card this turn, which you always will have. Then, of course, you're hitting weakness against Zoroark GX, which is huge in Japan and huge in Expanded, and this all starts to make a lot of sense. So if we're using MAXIE'S Hidden Ball Trick for Gallade, what are we using ARCHIE'S Ace in the Hole for? And the answer is, we are using it for Gyarados. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, Gyarados, he's back. And I know I just said Gyarados is back, but one of the things that I really enjoy about this deck is that this is the Gyarados that only came out recently in Burning Shadows and just really hasn't had much time to be particularly good. So this Gyarados, it's all about the attack Venting Anger. 50 damage for each Magikarp in your discard pile. Now, the really annoying thing about Gyarados has always been this. We don't have broken time space anymore, which means you cannot evolve this Gyarados in a single turn. So what you essentially do is you say, alright, 3 Magikarp in a discard, I can hit 150, that's pretty good, because then I've got 1 Magikarp that I've had to evolve into the Gyarados I'm currently using. Problem is, of course, that if you do that, then Gyarados gets KO'd, you don't have a Magikarp on the bench, so you can't have a Gyarados next turn. That's a little bit annoying. So you have a Magikarp on the bench ready to evolve the following turn, except if you do that, then you're only doing 100 damage, which is fine if you end up against a Volcanion Turtonator deck, which is a good valid deck in Expanded. Doing 100 damage will be fine, and you can just play this Gyarados in the same way as you always would. But unless you're hitting for fire weakness, or water weakness on fire Pokemon to be precise, you're just not doing enough damage. But then in comes ARCHIE'S Ace in the Hole. Now you can get a Gyarados from the discard onto your bench, you don't need to have a Magikarp underneath it, and all of a sudden you can have 4 Magikarp in the discard, which means you're hitting for 200 damage, you add a choice band onto that bad boy and you're hitting 230 damage, and then even your big boys like Gardevoir are going down here. Now we're starting to look good. Plus, of course, you're hitting for both water weakness with Gyarados and fighting weakness with Gallade. And I suppose at this point it is worth shouting that, you know what, double colourless energy fuels both of these attacks. That's pretty nice. Now, in terms of other Pokemon that you want to be playing here, you've obviously got Tapu Koko. Really good as a spreading Pokemon, free retreater, which is always handy, and for a double colourless energy, you do 20 damage to all of your opponent's Pokemon. That sounds pretty good to me. Oranguru's always nice and fun just as a basic Pokemon that you can use to draw some extra cards, and with it being the expanded format, we need to be playing at least one of the Sensu Oricorio, because we need to be taking KOs against Night March. You need a Night March counter here. Joltik is what you do. Although if you really want to beat Night March, might I suggest playing Karen, because Karen forces both players to shuffle all their Pokemon back into their deck. Really good Night March counter. Although do be careful with Karen, because if you play a Karen, you are getting all of your Gallade and Gyarados out of your discard. You might need them in their next turn to play ARCHIE'S or MAXIE'S. It is also worth playing Sudowoodo in this particular deck, and the reason is very simple. Gyarados has a fairly hefty 150 HP, so play a Sudowoodo. It's really a Skyfield counter more than anything. With a Skyfield, then Zoroark can hit a huge amount of damage and it sucks, blah blah blah. But if you play a Sudowoodo, your opponent can only have 4 bench spaces, and Zoroark, as well as being weak to Gallade, is not much of an offensive threat against either Gallade or Gyarados. They both have 150 HP. Of course, it's always just quite nice to limit your opponent's bench. And I do need to give a quick mention here to the Magikarp from Burning Shadows. It is an amazing Magikarp. Now, it doesn't have Flail, and if you're playing Shining Celebi, then I think maybe playing the Flail Magikarp could be a bit of fun. But as long as you're not playing Shining Celebi, then all you want to do here, nice and simply, is play the Crimson Invasion Magikarp with Submerge, which is an amazing ability, which basically gives it protection when it's on the bench, which is absolutely brilliant. Definitely the best Magikarp to play. Now, in terms of consistency, don't forget that we have both Tapu Lele and Shaymin in the expanded format, and I really like Shaymin here, because Shaymin is a 2-prize Pokemon, 110 HP. Your opponent is going to be very keen to play something like a Guzma and KO that Shaymin, but here's the thing. If they do that, they're not getting rid of the Gyarados, they're not getting rid of the Gallade. Given how much more difficult it is to get those Pokemon out properly, i.e. with ARCHIE'S and MAXIE'S, which I suppose is not properly, but you know what I mean, you want to protect those Pokemon. Now, the other thing to mention here, and it does need to be mentioned, is that you're not always going to be able to pull off the ARCHIE'S MAXIE'S trick. Some turns you will, some turns you won't. This is why having a Gyarados evolved from Magikarp, or having a Magikarp on the field to evolve it up, is a good thing. You can always use Tapu Koko or Oricorio, for instance, but other than that, you do need to be prepared for those turns where you don't pull off the ARCHIE'S or MAXIE'S trick. The good news is that in Expanded, you've got access to computer search, which does make it easier to actually grab yourself that particular supporter that you want. And of course, Tapu Lele means that you could, for instance, Ultra Ball away the last 2 cards in your hand to grab a Tapu Lele to grab the ARCHIE'S or the MAXIE'S. It is absolutely possible. Now, in terms of energy here, it's just double colorless. This is a deck where you need a bunch of tricks, so you really want to keep the energy count as low as possible, and all your attackers attack for double colorless energy, or at least the attacks that you want attack for double colorless energy. So you know what? That sounds like a plan to me. And we're not going to go through every single possible trainer card that you could play, but there are some here that really do stick out more than others. Obviously, you've got ARCHIE'S, MAXIE'S, and computer search. That should go without saying. But here you really need to take account of Battle Compressor. Battle Compressor is an amazing item card that allows you to discard 3 cards from your deck, including Gyarados and ARCHIE'S, or Gallade and MAXIE'S. And then, of course, being the expanded format / Japanese format, we've got access to Versus Seeker. So if you've got one Versus Seeker in your hand and nothing else, but you've got an ARCHIE'S in the discard, then you Versus Seeker for the ARCHIE'S and off you go. You need to get these cards in the discard for this deck to work. Versus Seeker does that beautifully. Might I also suggest playing Trainer's Mail here? Trainer's Mail is a really good card because it allows you to look at the top 4 cards and choose a trainer. But here's the thing, this could maybe sometimes help you search out your ARCHIE'S or your MAXIE'S, or sometimes you've got an Ultra Ball and a Trainer's Mail and 2 other cards in hand. So you play the Ultra Ball, discarding 2 cards. You fail the Trainer's Mail, even if you could have hit something. and then you're off. Trainer's Mail can help with consistency, or it can be a card in your hand which is really easy to burn, which means it's more likely. And remember, this is the key to this deck. You've got to be thinking Archie's and Maxie's. You've got to be thinking every turn, I need to end up with either an Archie's or a Maxie's, a Versus Seeker, or a Tapu Lele in my hand at the end of this turn. Or Guru helps, Shaman helps, Trainer's Mail helps, Computer Search helps. These are all cards that you need. As with any deck where you're playing just for double colourless energy, Energy Lotto is a really good thing to play. And I would recommend here Puzzle of Time, because play 2, get 2 cards back in your hand. That is nice, that helps you hit the combo. But like Trainer's Mail, it is a burnable card. You can play a single copy, rearrange the top 3 cards of your deck. It is a card that you can get out of your hand without replacing it with something else, making it more likely you hit your Archies or your Maxies. And in case I haven't been clear enough, that is your aim basically every turn. Oh yeah, and in the same way you need Energy Lotto to search your energy, you do need Special Charge to get your special energy back. One card I should have mentioned earlier, which I didn't, but I'll add it in now, Execute. Execute is really nice here because you just get to put an Execute from your discard into your hand. You can discard it with Battle Compressor, and the great thing here is if you've got one card in hand and an Ultra Ball, you bring up an Execute, use the Ultra Ball. If you've got no cards in hand and an Ultra Ball, then if you've got 2 Execute in a discard, you can do that. You bring Execute back to your hand from the discard with the Propagation ability or not, depending on how many cards you need to play from your hand so that you can empty out your hand. It is absolutely crucial. Execute is a great card here. And that is the weird deck in a nutshell that was doing alright on the stream this past weekend in Japan. Shout out to ADVGYM who chucked us some messages about this. That was lovely. Although I was following the Japanese Twitter and half watching the stream, but I like getting messages from people about Pokemon stuff. It is lovely, and it convinced me that people would want to see a video about this. As always, ladies and gentlemen, tell me what you think about this deck in the comment section. Go nuts! Be nice. Do you think it's viable in our expanded format? And make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWossy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus pods and so on, you can do so by going to patreon.com/PTCGRadio. And please make sure you check out my video game channel, Wossy Plays, where we do video game stuff, and it's an awful lot of fun. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.